Hey there guys, and welcome back to another video on my channel. And in this video we are going to start the Python tutorials, and we are going to make a calculator first. So I'm using the Python Community Edition, PyCharm Community Edition IDE for this tutorials, and I generally use this IDE to develop, and this IDE is available for free both for Windows and Linux. Just to be sure, when you run this IDE for the first time, just to be sure, click on configure, go to settings, project interpreter, and make sure that the Python version is over here. If it's not, you just click on the drop down menu and select your Python version, click on apply and OK. Now you can click on create project and replace this untitled by your project name. Name it calculator if you are working with me over here. We're gonna go back now. Since I already have a project set up, I'm just gonna go start it. Now if you are not seeing your project perspective over here, press Alt 1 and this window will appear. So this is basically your project hierarchy. To create new Python files, you right click on your project name, new Python file, click on Python file, type the name, press OK. So the new Python file will be opened, and as you can see, it's created over here, and you can start coding over here. I'm just gonna close it. Now to make a calculator, we are going to have addition, subtraction, divide, multiply, and remainder in it. By remainder, I mean it's going to show you the remainder of the division. Okay, so here we start now. We start by printing user, or displaying user the choices he has. So we type print and we write 1 add \n is for new line in the display screen. If I don't write \n, it's going to print everything in the same line. Add 2 dot sub and \n 3 dot div \n 4 dot mult and \n 5 dot remainder of division, just to be clear. Okay, so now that we have an option menu, we want user to input a number from 1 to 5. Okay, so to take inputs from the user, you need to create a variable first. Variable store the input of the user. So to create a variable, I'm just gonna create a variable named user input, and I'm gonna equate it to input from user. So for that you use input function, and for now to explain functions, anything followed by a parentheses or curved brackets is a function. Okay, and it can have values inside the curly brackets, or sorry, the curved brackets. And in this case, the input function takes inside the curved brackets a sentence enclosed in the inverted commas, and a sentence enclosed in the inverted commas is basically known as a string in computers. So it takes an input string, which basically has the prompt, or say what are you going to show to the user, to the value. So we are going to write over here, enter your choice, and after that we are going to put a colon, and we are going to give a space to user to enter the choice. So user is going to see this menu, and in the next line user is going to see enter your choice after a space, so he can enter a choice 1 2 3 4 5 whatever. Okay, so now depending on the user input, we are going to manipulate our program on what to do. But before that, let me tell you 3 basic things about variable making. You can have any variable name, but it should not start with an underscore, because usually underscore variables like this are inbuilt stuff. So I would rather not have an underscored variable beginning. You cannot have a variable name simply like this. So the basic instinct we follow for the variable names is either the camel casing or the underscoring. So say user input should technically have a space in them, right? But if I enter a space, it's become the invalid stuff, or invalid statement. So to make sure it's readable, I can insert either an underscore over here, or I can capitalize stuff. So every new word will be capitalized like this. So for simplicity, I'm just gonna leave it underscored over here. And moving on, now like I said, we are going to manipulate our program the way the user adds choices. But first thing I'm going to tell is that in Python 3, this input always takes input in a string. So for example, user entered one number when our program is running, it's going to take input as 1. So instead of a numbered variable, it's going to become an integer. Instead of an integer variable, it's going to become a string variable, and I don't want that to happen. So for that, we are going to use typecasting. We are going to convert that in string into an integer. So now this string input, like this, will be converted into an integer and come out to be here as 1. So this is going to happen over here. So moving on, now we have an integer input and an integer variable user input over here. So now in this case, since we want the program to manipulate by the choice, so like for example, if the choice is 1, we want to add. If choice is 2, we want to subtract. Else if choice is 3, we want to divide. Else if choice is 4, we want to multiply. Else if user input is say 5, we want to find the remainder of the division. Else it's an invalid choice. Okay, now for that, first thing we are going to take check if the user input is valid or not. Okay, to do that, we are going to write an if statement. Now the basic structure of an if statement is if you write the parentheses, you write your condition, and then after that you write a colon. And notice when I press enter, there is a tab space. So when everything under this tab space will get executed if this condition is true. So like say I have statement 1, then I have statement 2, then I have statement 3. Now all these statement 1, 2 and 3 will only run if this condition is true inside the if statement. Okay, if this condition is not true, the program will resume from here. Okay, now if I have an else, which is also followed by a colon, and also have statement 1, statement 2 over here. Now if this condition is not true, these two statements will run. If this condition is true, these three statements will run first, and then the program will continue from here. So either if this condition is true, this will run, program will continue from here, else this will run, and then program will continue from here. Now we have another third type of thing called else if, which is written as like this. It also has a condition inside it, and it is also followed by this state 1, 2, state anything over here. So if this condition is not true, first this condition will be checked. Now if this condition, which is say condition 2, is true, the statement will run and the program will continue from here. Now if both these condition 1 and 2 are false, like it means they do not satisfy, only else will run. Now if condition 1 is true, these statements will run and then the program will continue from here. You can have only one if statement, only an if else statement, but if you are having an else if statement, it has to have an if first. You cannot have only an else statement, it has to have an if first. So if else is possible, only if is possible, if else if, else if, else if, else if, then else is possible. So there are a number of else ifs you can have between if and else. You can only have an if else if statement, this is also possible. So without a further delay, since I have already explained you the basic if else structure, I'm gonna start coding now. I'm gonna just have a if statement over here. We are going to check if the user input equal to 1. We are going to take x from user, which will be a number, so int, and it's going to be an input from user, enter number 1, and I'm just gonna copy paste it. I'm gonna change the name to y now because this will be our second number 2. Before going further, I'm going to make a result variable which will store result. Okay, now I'm just going to add result is equal to x plus y. Okay, now if the choice is 2, so it's obvious that if the choice is not equal to 1, if the user input is not equal to 1, it can be either 2, 3, 4 or 5 or anything else, right? So we can have an else if statement over here, because user input equal to 2, and under this statement I'm just gonna copy paste it, and since we are going to subtract it, I'm going to change this plus to minus. Now I'm going to copy paste all of this else if statement, 2 for now, for 3 and for 4 and for 5, and for 3 we are going to have the by symbol, which is basically divide, and for 4 over here we are going to have multiplying symbol. For 5 we are going to have a remainder symbol, which is %. Okay, so now we have all our conditions satisfied. Like if the user input is 1, we have added the 2 numbers successfully. If the user input is 2, we have subtracted the input successfully. If the user input is 3, we have divided. If the user input is 4, we have multiplied. If the user input is 5, we have found out the remainder. Okay, but what if user input is not 5, not 1, or any of the above? We are going to print invalid choice. Okay, so now what's going to happen is that if user input is 1, this is what this condition is. If user input is 1, take one number, take the second number, add them and store them in results. Now if user input, say the other cases, if the user input is not equal to 1, let's say it's equal to 4, what will happen is it will check if 4 equal to 1, which is not true. If 4 equal to 2, not true again, so this will not run, this will not run. Similarly, this will not run, but here 4 equal to 4, so this condition is true, so this will run, right? So it will multiply 2 numbers. Now if user input is equal to 6, this will be not true, this will be not true, this will be not true, not true, not true. So since all of the conditions are not true, only else will run and it will print me an invalid choice. Okay, so this is how an if else statement looks like. So this is an equal to operator, which is used to check if the two numbers are equal, or which is two values are equal or not. Similarly, we have not equal to, less than equal to, greater than equal to. Okay, again, and then we have, I think, another one, triple equal to, which checks the value as well as the type. So anyways, if let's just continue the program now. Since we are all set to check if it was an invalid choice or what to do when the valid choice is done, we just need to print the results to the user. So I'm gonna write print. To print a variable, you can just type the name of the variable. Okay, so now we're going to run the program and see, it has printed me the menu waiting for my choice. I'm gonna add number 1 is 2, number 2 is 2, and you can see the result. Let's make things a little bit more fancier, and I'm gonna type over here result equal to. Now I want to combine my sentence with my variable, so I'm gonna have a concatenation operation over here, which means dot. So whenever you want to combine two strings, or say one string with something else to print, you use dot. So I'm just gonna run this now. Now I'm going to have a remainder of 2 division, so I'm gonna divide 5 by 2. Okay, it threw me an error because str object has no attribute. Oh, I think I need a plus over here instead of dot. I confused it with another language probably. So I'm just gonna run it again. Sorry for my bad. See, this is the disadvantage of knowing too many languages. You confuse stuff. Okay, now it's telling me to convert this integer to string. So I'm just gonna do that by using the str function right here. And now we run this and it's going to be fine. And voila, see, division of 5 by 2 is 1. So why did it give me those errors? The first error was because I was using dot with instead of plus. I should have used plus to combine 2 strings. And then the second error was that you are trying to combine a string with an integer. So it doesn't make sense, because for integer this plus means addition, and for string this plus means join it with another string. So there was a type mismatch error, which we call them. So this was the problem over there. So to tackle such problem, what I did was, first I figured that instead of dot I need to use plus. Second thing was that I have to convert this variable, which is an integer type variable, that is a number, to a string. And to do that, we have an inbuilt function in Python called str, which takes inside the parentheses the variable which you want to convert. So now this result value will be converted into string. So what happened over here was, I typed the choice 5, it checked 5 is not equal to 1. Okay, let's start from the beginning. It showed me this, it printed me this, where backslash n means new line, and then it waited for me from an input, and I inputted the number 5. It took an input as a string over here, and then converted it into an int, which means an integer, and then stored that value in user input. Now that user input which is 5, checked if it is equal to 1. 5 is not equal to 1, so this condition is false. None of this will run. So now it goes to the else if user input equal to 2, which is here 5. So user input is not equal to 2, so none of this runs. Similarly, this else if will not run, this else if will not run. Now it comes to this else if. Checks user input value, which is 5, is equal to 5. Yes, the condition is right, it's true. So it took 2 numbers, x and y, converted them into an integer number, stored them into x and y, then it found the remainder of x divided by y, which is 5 divided by 2. So 2 2s are 4, so 5 minus 4 is 1, so the remainder over here was 1, and stored that in result. And then since an above condition was true and it ran, the else condition will not run now. That means the else condition will only run if all of the above mentioned conditions are not true, that is, they are false, incorrect, or do not satisfy, whichever you can understand from. So now since this else ran, the execution will now continue from after all the if else statements are written. So my if else statements end over here, so the execution will now continue from here. And over here it just says simply result is equal to result, and here is the result. Now to give you another demo, I'm just gonna enter the choice as 4, 2, 3. It's 6, and see the output is 6. So this is what's happening over here, is that the the option 4 is over here, right? So 4 user input is 4 now, so 4 is equal to 4, this is true, so this runs, and then since this runs, no need to check the below conditions, and so this runs. Okay, now if you want to check two conditions together, like if you want to check two conditions together, you have an AND operator. Say a variable result equal to 0. So now this will check for if both of these conditions are true, like if the user input is 1 and the result is also equal to 0, this will run. Okay, now this checks both the conditions. To check only say what any one of the condition is true, you have OR. So this will check pretty much self-explanatory. If user is input equal to 1 or result is equal to 0, so if any of these two is true, all these will run. Okay, now you also have a NOT, which checks the reverse of the condition. So I'm just gonna remove this over here and put that over here. So if I write NOT over here, it's going to basically check if user input is not equal to 1. Note that it is similar to simply typing not equal to 1, but this NOT is quite a lot used when you want to check something less than equal to or something. So what this does is, say user input is I put the value 1, so user input here will be 1, so 1 equal to 1, true. Now this NOT basically reverses the true to false and the false to true. So right now this will be replaced over here by true, and as I said, the NOT will replace the make the true to the opposite of it, which is false. So this whole will evaluate to false, and the condition will become false, and the if will not run. So that's not in the work. I'm just gonna leave it as it is, and here we are. So this is our basic structure of the program. Now just to make an invalid choice, I input choice as 7, and it said invalid choice. So basically this is how the program of a calculator is done. Now I'll explain you a step by step. Let me just check how much long is the video. It's 22 minutes. It's okay. I'll take around 10 minutes more. So let me just explain to you step by step. Print is a function which we use to display something to the user. Inside print, by inside print I mean inside the parentheses of the print, you write whatever you want to display to the user. If you want to display a message to the user, you will write that message inside inverted commas. Okay, now if you want to have something printed in the next line, you have to write \n. There are many other characters like this \n. They are called escape sequences. Like there is \t for tab space, and you can find many more on the web. Just read about them, what they are supposed to do. Most likely you will be using \n most of the time. Okay, now this is pretty much for the print statement. Now to take an input from the user, we use input function. Inside the parentheses we write the prompt or the message to the user which he will see at the line where he will be giving the input. Okay, so in this case we have written enter your choice. Now input function takes input in a string form. A string is basically anything inside inverted commas. So this over here, all this is basically a string data type. Okay, so to change that string into a number, an integer specifically, we use the function called int, and inside this int function it takes the string value which you want to convert to an integer. It can also take a decimal number like 3.4 in this case, 3.4.3. in this case it will take only the integer part, which is 4, and assign it to user input. Okay, so now this string over here is converted into an integer using int function. Now to store the choice of the user, we created a variable user input and assigned it to the value of the integer value of the input of the user. And it sounds a little bit complicated, but let me put this way. We took an input from the user in string, we converted it into an integer, and we assigned that integer value to the variable user input. Okay. Now we declared another variable called result and gave it a default value of 0. Then to check and manipulate our program as per the choice of the user, we use if statements, which are decision making statements. Basically, if statement is a statement which will check a condition. If the condition is true, it will run everything inside the if statement. So basically this is the condition over here, and this is the inside if statement. Okay, so all these statements, all these three statements will only run if this condition is true. Okay, now if I were to break out of this if statement, I'll simply remove the tab space. So tab spacing is important in Python because let me put it this way: a line under a line. So this line, if have the same spacing as the above line, they will considered be in the same block. So since this also have one tab space and this also have one tab space, this whole will be in one block. The C users will understand now. It's similar to putting this. Now if I have a tab space over here again, it will be like this. So this becomes a whole new block just because I had two tab spaces over here. So make it simple. To make it simple, Python, instead of using curly brackets, uses tab spaces to define the blocks of code. Okay, so we have to have a colon because now we are going to specify that, okay, whatever I'm going to write under a tab space is going to be for this if statement. Okay, so we put a colon, we give one tab space, and then we write everything for this if statement. And now if this statement is not true, it will check this statement. If this statement is true, that means user input is equal to 2, this will run, and then the program will continue from here and skip everything above till here. Okay, you can have statements, I think I marked it. You can have simple if else statement like this. You can have an if statement like this also, which will simply check the condition if it's true or not. If it's true, it will run and then continue here. If it's not true, it will simply skip all this and continue here. If there's an else, it will check if this statement is true, it will do this. If this is not true, it will run this, then continue from here. And you can have if, else if, and else statements. Now if condition is true, none of the else if will work. If any of the else if is true, the else will not work. Else will only and only work if all of the mentioned above conditions are false. You cannot have an if statement after an you can have an if statement after an else if, like say if I have an else if over here, user input equal to 2, then it just does something, whatever. So now what will happen is this is another part, and this becomes this becomes another part. So if any of the condition above is true, it will run, say this ran or say this ran, then the execution will continue from here because it's another whole new if statement. If it will check if this is true, if this is not true, then else will run. If this is true, this will run, and then the execution will continue from here. If none of the above condition is true, this if will be checked and this else will run if this condition is not true. In simple words, this if these else ifs corresponds to this if, and since we are starting a new if over here, any else ifs or else below this will correspond to this if. We can have if statements and else if statements inside else statements and else if statements, or even an if statement. So I can have an if statement over here or over here or over here. It's perfectly fine. We can have nested if else statements. And finally, at the end of the program, it calculates the result on the basis of the choices I have made and then prints me the result. As simple as that. So this is basically a calculator in Python. I hope you were able to get everything I said. If you were not, please follow the next upcoming tutorials, because this is not the only tutorial which will be using these if statements, else if statements and stuff. There will be many more project-based tutorials coming up. I will make sure that these tutorials are never ending and you get to learn as fast as possible, as most as possible. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.